the Department of Special Education Services.
Muy buenas noches, soy el señor Philip Lynch, el director del Departamento de Servicios de Educación Especial.
I'd like to introduce our Acting Associate Superintendent, Diana Wiles.
Good evening. It's good to see everyone tonight.
We'll get started in a moment. At first, I want to introduce Mr. Mejia, who is our Spanish-speaking interpreter, and he will be providing interpretation services using a device that we have at the bottom of the screen. When I turn it over to Mr. Mejia, you will see a globe at the bottom of the screen showing you how to access Spanish interpretation.
Buenas noches, felizmente esta noche contamos con servicios de interpretación. Los que quieran interpretación al español van a encontrar al pie de su pantalla un icono con un globo terrestre que ustedes pueden presionar y escoger la opción español si es que quieren escuchar esta conferencia en español. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Well, good evening and welcome again. My name again is Philip Lynch. For those of you who just jumped in, I'm the Director for Special Education Services, Montgomery County Public Schools. We've introduced our Acting Associate Superintendent, Ms. Diana Wiles, and I want to take a moment to introduce our wonderful SECAC co-chairs. We'll start with Ms. Ayala. Do you want to start and say hello, Victoria?
Yes, thank you, Phil. Hello, everybody, and thank you for being with us tonight. I want to welcome all new and returning family. My name is Vittoria Iello, and I have one child in special education. Thank you.
And we'll also hear hello from Amy Bloom, another one of our co-chairs.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's nice to, as always, see our familiar faces and welcome our new families. My name's Amy Bloom. I think you got that already. We have two boys. One is in 3rd grade at Bethesda Elementary, and the other one is in 6th grade at Westland. And we are learning a lot navigating the special ed program there. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to tonight's topic. So thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Amy. And is Connie with us, or is she unable to join us this evening?
I don't know. I had a little trouble logging in, so she might be too. I can zap her a text to check in.
Okay, well,
I don't see her here now yet.
Our other co-chair shows up, we will pause and allow her an opportunity to introduce herself. We have an exciting agenda this evening, and I want to let's start by recognizing that somebody who has been a big support to me and the Department of Special Education and Services and the Office of Special Education Services, who couldn't join us this evening, has moved on to a different position, and that is my coordinator, Jennifer Strobel, has taken another position. She has been in this position for the past 6 years, and like I said, she's just been a huge asset to us as an office and department, and to this SECAC community. So she will be sorely missed, and she will be joining us. She couldn't make it tonight to say official goodbyes, but she will be joining us next month, because she will be sharing some information relevant to her new role, which is a really exciting role for her, but also for the system, taking an innovative look at how to provide professional development, and really trying to take an approach that we hope will solve some challenges that we've had in finding time for staff and teachers to be available for professional development without having a huge impact on the daily operations for students. So she'll share some information about that at next month's meeting. I want to take a minute to go through the agenda. So Derek, if you want to go ahead and put up the presentation. And before I start, I will remind folks that the presentations are always made available to you after we're finished on the SECAC webpage, along with a recording of this session. So if you have family and friends that are unable to be here this evening, you can always direct them to our SECAC webpage, and they will be able to view this session. So we've made it through our introductions, and we're going to provide any opportunities for public comment. For those of you who are new to us, public comment is an opportunity for members of the community to provide feedback to us. It can be positive, it can be challenges. We hope that the feedback is constructive and is framed in a way that that protects any privacy for students and staff. And we also hope that it's information that is shared that will benefit the entire community. Are there any folks, co-chairs that have contacted you regarding public comment? Okay. And so we do ask for folks to reach out to our SECAC co-chairs to indicate to them that you would like to make public comment. So in the future, if you would like to do that, please reach out to them. Their contact information is available at the SECAC webpage. You can see their email addresses. We do ask you share information with them in advance so that I can then follow up with you as needed if it's something that I need to look into or collect additional information on. So tonight we will be hearing some updates from MCPS staff members, including our acting associate superintendent, who will be talking about the budget development and timelines. We'll hear from Mary Beth Mansuranis, who is our parent engagement staff member, who will be talking a little bit about what is going on with our parent workshops and parent resources. There's a lot of exciting information there. We will hear from our partners at the Montgomery County Department of Rec, and they will be sharing updates. And then also Derek has some updates for us. If you don't know Derek Ritzenberg, he's the man behind the scenes who is working the controls for us during these meetings, but he's also our master tech person in our office. And he's been doing some wonderful work on the webpage. A lot of it is still in progress, but he's going to share some updates in terms of where we are. We know we've gotten a lot of feedback from you guys about how to help improve the website, and Derek is actively working on that. So he'll share some updates on that. So with that said, we'll jump into the budget timelines, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Wiles.
Good evening, everyone. So this has been an extremely busy time. We've been doing a lot of work on our budget, and I wanted to share where we are in the process, as well as what the Office of Special Education has submitted as our proposed budget for fiscal year 24, which is our 23-24 school year. What you see on the slide presentation is our timeline for budgeting. So we have finished the third of our work sessions with the board. We've had, this is the final one. It was on Tuesday of this week. We also had 2 public hearing dates on January 11th and 17th. So that piece of it is completed. Recently, our new governor released his recommended budget for the state, which will impact the amount of money that MCPS and other LEAs receive. So some adjustments may be made prior to a final budget, and our budget office is working through and reviewing that information currently. On February 23rd at the board meeting, that is a tentative date for our board to vote on adopting our proposed FY24 budget. If you have had an opportunity in the past to live through this budget process, then you know that our budget, when it is voted on by our board, is still proposed. It's proposed to the county council. School systems do not fund themselves, so the final approval comes from the county council. So on the 23rd, the budget that is voted on would be the one that goes to the council for further review. Throughout the months of March and April, the county council will be presenting, MCPS staff will be presenting to the county council, providing feedback on what our proposed budget is. Any requested amendments, revisions to the budget would be made, and then there'll be work sessions sometime in April and May. We would encourage you to come out to those council sessions. There will be opportunities for public comment at that time, and I will let Phil speak more to that. On May 25th, that is the proposed date for the council to vote on and approve the final budget for FY24. So before we go to the next slide, if Phil, he wanted to speak a little bit on the opportunity for public comment.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that people had these dates in front of them, so you can see that I highlighted that March 1st date where the Board of Education transmits that budget to the county council, and then from there, there'll be discussions amongst the council in terms of the adoption of the budget before the county executive releases his budget. So you can see the dates for those county council budget public hearings, which go through April 23rd. So that we don't have the specific dates up here, but I want you to be aware of that timeline, because those are going to be the periods of time when you really have an opportunity to speak directly to your council members about priorities or impact that you feel are important and that you would like to see funded that are currently outlined in our budget. So that's the timeline there for you. So really during that period of April, and then they go into their work sessions.
Next slide. So I wanted to share two things with you as an overview of where we are with the OSE budget, Office of Special Education budget for FY24. Montgomery County Public Schools has 10 chapters in their budget. Essentially what that means is there are 10 different buckets of funding. Special education falls into Chapter 1 and Chapter 5. Chapter 1 is services directly to schools. So it's staffing primarily. So the salaries and wages you see on this slide are the salaries and wages for all of our special educators, para-educators, and other positions that are funded through special education, related service providers that are housed in the schools. Under contractual services, that would be any services that we contract out to ensure the provision of services and continuity of services. We're currently contracting with agencies to provide occupational, physical, and speech and language, physical therapists and speech and language pathologists, so that we can ensure students are receiving those services while we continue to attempt to fill any vacancies that we have in the district. The contractual services also includes music therapy, art therapy, and our nursing services. We also have a budget line for supplies and materials for our students. And then under other is the benefits for employee benefits for our staff members housed in schools and equipment for assistive technology. Our total budget request for Chapter 1 direct support to our schools is $305.4 million. Next slide. In Chapter 5, what you see is our central services budget. So these are all of our staff members and the work that helps to support the work of the school-based staff. Our budget request is $111.9 million. A little under half of that goes to salaries and wages for our central office staff. Again, we have those contractual services for our therapists who support the schools but are housed in central services, supplies and materials, and under other that $55.5 million that you see is for our non-public placements. So these are our students who have significant needs that cannot, unfortunately, be met in the public school system. So they are attending non-public placements so that we can ensure the provision of special education services. And then finally, equipment. The 20,000 you see here is to help support the funding of Mary Beth's office so that we can ensure that you all as parents have resources that you need so that you can develop an understanding of the process, the special education process, develop advocacy skills, and we can work with you effectively. Next slide. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mary Beth and take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to read what I've written because if not, I'll be all over the place. So you will thank me later. I am.
And Mary Beth, why don't you, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Sure,
Why don't you
that's
take
okay.
a moment because we may have folks who did not meet you or
Oh, sure.
introduced to you or your position the last time that we met. So if you could just say quickly who you are and what your position is, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So I'm Mary Beth Mansaranis. I am the Family Support Services Coordinator in the Department of Special Education. And actually, since the last time I met with you all, which I think was actually in November, because Dr. McKnight was here in December, I've received a lot of emails and phone calls from you. So I think that's great. It makes me really happy because my job really is to be a resource to you. So if there's anything that I can do to help you, I most certainly will. And I think some of the money that Diana just referred to also has to do with like some physical things. You know, sometimes parents are looking for an actual text on, you know, information to support their child. So I'm excited to see that that's in the budget there. What I want to do is to make you aware of some of the workshops that are coming up in the month of February. Don't worry, I don't expect you to just remember them. I will be sending out an email next week. And the flyers will also be posted on our special education website, the Family Support Center website, and on the Facebook and Twitter social media accounts. So lots of ways for you to find out what's happening and to share with those that you think it would be important for them to attend. The goal, which was sort of briefly addressed, is one of the goals of this position is to provide, hopefully, at least monthly workshops that address a trend in parent questions or concerns. And one of the big concerns that came up in the MSDE survey and just in conversations with parents has really just been around the whole IEP process. And in response to that, we've tried to craft a series that will provide some information and some support, sort of as our starting place. So this past Monday, we held our first in a series of 3 workshops. And in this one, parents learned about the major components of the IEP process and then had an opportunity to ask questions and to get some information and insights about the different IEP supports and services that are aligned to their child's education. So we did record the session and it will be available. We went through the Parent Academy, so it will be posted on the MCPS YouTube channel once it makes its way through communication. So I do recommend that you see that. There's a lot of great graphics and visuals that I think are helpful. The next session is going to be on February the 6th, and it's called Understanding the IEP, Present Levels and Goals. And surprise, that's exactly what it's about. It's an opportunity for parents to really read and interpret those sections and to help parents to see sort of your role in that part, you know, being able to speak to your child's strengths and areas of need, and how to better understand what those progress codes mean when you get those quarterly reports. And then the final in this series is actually going to be an in-person workshop on Tuesday, February the 21st. And this one will be really just sort of that overall goal of like the importance of parental input in the IEP process. And during that workshop, we're going to hopefully be creating a resource, a binder of some sort that will allow you to put, you know, information about each of the IEP components and maybe sort of have a place to house things about your child. We'll also have an opportunity for you to ask questions. There will be MCPS staff there, and we'll follow up on any outstanding questions from the previous 2 workshops. I'm also excited to announce that next month, MCPS is partnering with X Minds, which is the Partnership for Extraordinary Minds, and presenting a webinar on educational placements for students with autism. So for those of you who don't know, X Minds is a nonprofit organization that works collaboratively to improve the educational experiences and the outcomes of students with autism. So this particular workshop webinar is entitled Primers on MCPS Placements for Autistic Students. And there will be MCPS staff at the webinars to respond to any questions you might have. And in order to reach the most people in the most efficient manner, on one night, Tuesday, February the 7th, there will be a meeting going on for preschool placements. At the same time, on a different Zoom, that there'll be a meeting happening for middle school and high school placements. And then on Thursday of that week, on the 9th, the same meeting will happen, the same webinar, but it'll be focused on elementary school placements. And this structure, we hope, allows you to attend the meeting that directly aligns with your child's age and their specific needs. So again, I know it's a lot of information. Don't expect you to remember it, but there will be flyers sent out and you'll receive an email, with all the information I've shared. And then I think the last thing is just to remind you that we are going to have a special education community resource fair on Saturday, April the 29th at Gaithersburg High School. Lots more information to come, but we're planning to have representatives from MCPS as well as our community partners. We're going to have fun activities like barnyard animals, face painting, tattoos, and other events, with the overall goal for families who have children with an IEP to receive information that supports you and your child while also having a little bit of fun on a Saturday. So I don't know if you have any questions or if there's no time for that, but I'm going to stop now.
Thank you so much, Mary Beth. At this time, I want to introduce our partners from the Montgomery County Recreation Department and Sharon Norcio, specifically, who's going to share some information about some upcoming info. And there's a flyer that we can post on the SECAC webpage. It's a PDF, so I couldn't do the link for us here, but I did a little snapshot in the slide. But we'll make that available to folks on the parent resource page, the SECAC page. Sharon?
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Sharon Norcio, and I work with Montgomery County Recreation, and I am thrilled to be here. We had a great engaging session last week. Mary Beth set it up so that parents had a chance to hear a little bit about how to find camps in Montgomery County, not just through Montgomery County Recreation, but parks offerings. And we also talked about City of Gaithersburg, City of Rockville, different agencies that do provide that. And then we had a great question and answer session after that. I had several follow-up emails and questions. So I would love to, if you guys want to talk to me about how to find the right place for your child, I would be happy to do that. I will also send you the link. Last week, we did this program, and I was lucky enough today to get the flyer that Phil has presented in there. And that has a PDF that will take you, or a QR code that will take you directly to the website where you can search for camps either by location or by age. And our camps do go from age, the therapeutic recreation camps, which is pretty much the special ed kids, smaller group, more structure. Those camps go from age 6 to age 21. And then our general day camps go from 4 to 16. So we have a couple different groups. They're all listed in there through that same link. Also on the back part, there is another QR code that will take you to the Rec Assist page. That is Recreation Department's financial assistance program. And all of that information on Rec Assist and the applications is available in both English and Spanish. Both forms are on that. When you click to the link, you can either pick Rec Assist or en Espanol, and you will find the form that that hopefully they will need. And then once you go in there, it will give you information about all the different locations, the dates, the times, and you can mix and match any of those. So you could do, for instance, you could do a full day camp, go to ESY or summer school for half day. Then we have afternoon camps, then come back to us later in the summer, any combination thereof. Also in that same portal, which is called Active Montgomery, you can access all of Montgomery County Parks programs. And they do have some nature center programs as well as ice skating and tennis and just some general sensory programs. So even though Parks and Rec are two different agencies in Montgomery County, it is one convenient portal for you to go in and search. And if you just search in either a facility or an age group, it will come up with the combination of both recreation and parks options in there. Parks has their own financial assistance program separate from Rec Assist, which is the recreation one. But if you have any questions about that, there are links on there. Our customer service folks are super. And again, I will put my name in the chat. So if you have any questions and you would like to email me directly to help, answer specific questions, I'd be happy to do that. So that's all I have, because I know you have a very packed agenda this evening, but happy to be able to share that information and those links with you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. We always appreciate everything you all have to offer our families. At this time, I want to turn it over to Derek, who's going to just share some dates on what's going on with the website. And as I mentioned, for those of you who don't know, we've been receiving some feedback about how to improve our website in some of our networking sessions. And so Derek is working hard to try to make some of those upgrades. Derek.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. So I just want to share a couple of updates to our website. We've gotten feedback, and a lot of parents are asking for quick access to the events, especially the fun events that were just talked about a minute ago with Mary Beth and the rec department. So one of the features that we've added to the very top of our website is called a What's New story rotator. So at the very, very top of our MCPS special education website, you'll see that we have events that are rotating at the very top. And these are current events that are happening this week or next week. And so, for instance, right now we have our SECAC meeting. We have unlocking the major IEP components it's coming up February 6th. That's the second session in the 3-part series. And then we have contact an area supervisor. That's like a frequently asked question, and just want to make sure that folks are aware that that's present on our website. And then also we have our brand new family support center that's now live. So just want to make sure that people know about this this very top portion of our website, where you can access new trainings, new events, new information, news, things that are happening in our community. That's very upfront and live, the first thing that you see on our website. And then I actually want to show you real quick, if I can. Here we go. All right, so you should see the website right now. And at the very top is the rotator that I was just talking about. And so some people already asked, how can I access some of the events that Mary Beth talked about, right? So one of the things up here is the Family Support Center. So if you select the Family Support Center and you click Learn More, that'll take you to the Family Support Center for all of Mary Beth's amazing activities and events. Also, if you scroll down below on our website, to the left, right here underneath of sections, you'll see Family Support. And the very first link at the top is Family Support Center. So if you ever want to go directly to Mary Beth's website for the Family Support Center, just go ahead and click on that right there. And that gives you information how to contact the Family Support Center, and then some upcoming events and workshops. So recently we had a PEP workshop series, and then next is the second series in the IEP components, the workshop. And there's more resources below. So as events are happening and are added, you'll find that here at the Family Support Center website. Okay. And then also, again, you'll see this at the very top of our website. And then we also have announcements as well. So anytime that there's a SECAC meeting coming up and you select this link right here, that actually takes you to the agenda. So that way you don't have to go to different places to find the link to our SECAC meetings or the agenda. It's always listed right here under announcements. And there's resources also underneath the family support as well. Okay. And then last but not least, I just wanted to share, I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but we do have a Facebook MCPS Special Education Facebook site. We also have a Twitter site as well. And these posts are announcements of events and workshops also that are coming up. So if you follow our Twitter page, if you follow Facebook, you will also see those events come up as well. All right, and if you have any questions, if you would like any links to anything, feel free to put that in the chat. I will say that if you're ever looking for a video or a presentation from our SECAC meetings, these are always recorded and are usually uploaded within a few days to our SECAC website for any previous meetings. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary Beth, and thank you, Derek, for all of your work and support for our community. At this time, we're going to go to the next slide, and we would like to introduce Mr. Floyd Branch. I'm going to allow him to give you a little bit of background on his new position and the work that his office is doing to support this. I don't want to call it a new initiative, but the implementation of restorative justice practices throughout the system. He has been a wonderful resource to us in several of our professional development sessions with our central office and school-based staff recently. So we are putting him through the presentation ringer here to share this wonderful information with as many groups as possible. Prior to his work with his current work with this office, he was a wonderful support to our special education parents and students at a school-based position as a department chair, or what we call a RITSI. And so I'll allow him to say hello to you, introduce himself, and Mr. Branch, you will have plenty of time. We are right on time. We're not going to press you. We want you to feel like you can get through this presentation and share this important information with folks without rushing. And we will have an opportunity, as we always do. And for those of you who are new, I should have introduced our format to you, which is that at the end of Mr. Branch's session, we will then go into breakout rooms. You will have an opportunity to follow up in a more in-depth conversation on the topic of any of the presenters that we have here. And so Mr. Branch is going to be kind enough to hang out in a breakout room with you. So we know that sometimes it's a challenging format for you virtually to engage in a dialogue, but you will have that opportunity to do so. You're welcome to throw some questions in the chat, and we'll take a break in the middle of this presentation to try to address some of those. But just remember, you can always hold your questions, and you can talk about those topics with him directly during our breakout session. We will also have a breakout room where I will be present if you would like to chat with me, and then you will have a breakout room with our co-chairs as well. So you'll have an opportunity to speak to our co-chairs if you have any information that you'd like to share with them. So those will be our breakout sessions after Mr. Branch is done, but I wanted to make sure you understand that if you can hold off on some of your information or questions, and so we don't have to interrupt his flow, then we will have an opportunity at the end for us to discuss. Okay, so Mr. Branch, take it away.
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited, and a lot of this work is just kind of a passion of mine. So as Phil shared, I previously served as a resource teacher for special education, or RITSI, at Francis Scott Key Middle School in Silver Spring. In addition to that, I've served as a special ed math teacher, history teacher, team leader. So a lot of the work that I did there kind of encouraged me and motivated me to apply to work at this new division and pushing this initiative of restorative justice, not just in certain schools, but across all schools. And just for everybody's knowledge, all schools in Montgomery County are restorative justice schools. And a part of the work of the team that I want is to make sure that schools are implementing this with fidelity. So as we get started, one question I do I have ability to share my screen, or should I just say next slide?
You're going to tell Derek when you want to go to the next slide. Perfect.
All right, Derek, next slide. Thank you. So the purpose of this presentation is just to kind of talk about some of the work that my team members and I are doing with implementing restorative culture and practices at our various schools, elementary, middle, and high schools. So we're going to have our welcome and show you some other members of the team. The why, the what and the why behind restorative justice, restorative approaches to challenging behavior, and what does the code of conduct say about that? And then lastly, what does RJ support look like within schools? And then as caregivers, as providers, as parents, what can you do to support this work at home as well? Next slide, please. Next one, please. So this work starts with our supervisor, who is Shauna K. Jordan B., Director of Student Engagement, Behavioral Health, and Academics. She is an amazing resource, comes with a wealth of knowledge, always kind of giving us additional resources to share with schools. So she points us in the right direction and we follow her lead. Next slide, please. Anika Perez and Dr. Erica Edwards Singletary, they support the Wheaton High School, Wooten, Churchill, and Richard Montgomery clusters. So all the schools that fall under those clusters, they serve as the restorative justice, the restorative justice instructional specialists of those clusters. Next slide, please. Dr. Tariq Harris supports the Einstein, BCC, Blair, and Northwood clusters. Ms. Bethlehem Baru supports Seneca Valley, Rockville, Blake, and Paint Branch. Next slide, please. Myself, I support the Quince Orchard, Magruder, Walter Johnson, and Kennedy clusters. Carrie Vieira supports Clarksburg, Watkin Mills, Sherwood, and Damascus. Next slide, please. And then our last team, Ashley Bell and Michelle Bateman, support Springbrook, Poolesville, Northwest, and Gaithersburg. So every school in Montgomery County has a RJ coach, from elementary schools to middle schools to high schools. We work with them directly as well as school-based administrations to make sure that RJ practices and approaches are being implemented, and also at the same time working with staff in individualized cases as well to support their school needs. Next slide, please. So typically, we like to begin our learning with framing our learning around a quote. Rita Pearson, she's an amazing, passionate speaker, always working in the best interest of children. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. And that's what we want our MCPS staff, all staff members, to serve. We want them working in the best interest of children. And in our role, our goal is to help staff members build that bond with children so that school is a welcoming place, so that school is a place of comfort, school is a safe place, so that our kids know that they have an adult who cares about them in all settings. Next slide, please. So this graphic here is what we call our continuum of restorative practices, and we use it as a way to make sure that we are implementing our learning with school communities with fidelity. So if you notice, the graphic is broken into two pieces. It's broken into your preventative measures and your responsive measures. And our preventative measures, that's how we build our school communities, our classroom communities. How do we make kids feel that school is a special place? How do we help them find self-identity? How do we make them feel that they're a part of the school community? On the flip side, we also have our responsive measures. Our responsive measures are those moments when harm occurs. How are we managing situations as they arise? How are we addressing students in a restorative format as opposed to a punitive format, and through a punitive lens, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Next slide, please. So now we're going to look at the what and the why behind restorative justice. Next slide, please. So in the chat, this is kind of where we get to have you guys join in. Thinking about yourself as a parent, and I'm a parent myself. I have a 3rd grader and a 5th grader. How do you want your child to feel as they go to school every day? What is something that emotion that you would love to see from your child when they come home from school and talking about their school day? So if you can just identify that in the chat, we would love to hear what you guys have to say about responses. We see confident, empowered, safe, excited, supported, proud, confident in what they learn. Oh, that's a good one. To be known and be happy. Confident and peaceful, excited to learn, safe, happy, and confident. Hi, Betty. I know you're at Paint Branch. I saw you at the football game. Sorry, one of my old students is on here. Not feeling inferior. That's a good one. Welcoming, individualism, capable. And just for a side note, so Betty is on here. She is now a junior at Paint Branch. I was her 6th grade team leader many moons ago. And she's an amazing young lady. Accepted and happy, enthusiasm, confident, safe, feel cared for, supported, right? So, and thank you guys for joining in on this, because this is what we want for our students of MCPS. Like, we want them coming into a space where they feel loved and cared for and supported and happy about where they are and where they go to school. So thank you guys for your responses in the chat. Next slide, please. So when we think about restorative justice, one thing I love to say is that it's not a book you go on Amazon and buy. It's not a curriculum that says day 1, lesson 1. It's your mindset, it's your philosophy, it's your approach. And when we think about restorative practices and restorative justice, we're thinking about how are we creating this all-inclusive setting? How are we creating this environment that is belonging and representative of our students? When we think about restorative justice, we're thinking about how are we actively engaging in problem solving, right? The world around us is constantly changing. Education is constantly changing. How are we adapting to that? How are we looking at issues that are coming up, whether it be, for example, disciplinary issues, and saying how creating learning spaces from that, as opposed to saying, hey, you're going to go home and you're suspended and there's no conversation. Without conversation, there's no growth. On the flip side of that, how do we get those who have caused harm to somebody else to own their actions and take responsibility? A lot of times, restorative conversations are so powerful. And while it does take time, it does help to repair. One of the major pieces of the work of restorative justice is the repair. And then lastly, work with those who are affected to restore the members of the community and who was harmed. Because a lot of times when people are harmed, how are we supporting them to reintegrate? And that's a big piece of this work, is making those people, those students who were harmed, but also the one who did the harming, to feel supported as they reintegrate back into the school community. Next slide, please. So when we think about the pillars or the foundational pieces of restorative justice, we think about 3 areas. If you click, you can click it 3 times and they'll come up. Thank you, Derek. Building community. We talk about building community within the classroom, but also on a school-wide level. We talk about self-care. How are we making sure our students are in a space to learn? And when we say space, not the classroom space, in a mental, physical, emotional safe space, as well as our teachers. And then lastly, how are we resolving conflict? How are we looking at situations that arise and creating forums for conversations to take place so that all parties can be heard, to ensure that everybody's validated and to make sure that the same harm doesn't continue to move forward? Next slide, please. So how does RJ benefit MCPS schools? When students feel safe, they are part of the community. They are less likely to cause harm to the community. We want students to respect the community because they are proud of it. When you are part of something, you want to protect it. When you feel like you are integrated into the fabric of the community, you want to make sure that you're upstanding and keeping it safe. So that's that building community. Self-care. When students feel safe and secure socially and emotionally, they can focus on academics. It is also important for students to feel that they have a support system to share their needs. This will decrease student absences. It also decreases students from leaving from the classroom, right? When you feel safe, when you feel supported, when you feel people have your best interests, you want to be around those people. And then lastly, conflict resolution. When students are in conflict and disagreement, we want to provide the tools, space, and opportunity for them to respectfully solve their problems. I always say, how do we use our words and not our hands? How do we communicate respectfully that something was done to you that you didn't like, but how do we move forward and create agreements that will allow people to coexist? We want to teach our students to understand the harm that they've caused and take accountability for their actions. Next slide, please. So all of this came about in 2019, slightly before the pandemic, because as we know, the numbers of suspensions and disciplinary punitive measures were on the rise. So the state of Maryland passed a bill, Bill 725, that basically summarized that schools across the state of Maryland have to take preventative and proactive measures. They have to emphasize building strong relationships, not just from student to student, but also staff to student and student to staff, and setting clear behavioral expectations that contribute to the well-being of the community, focus on accountability, and address ways to repair the relationships with those who are harmed. Next slide, please. In the grand scheme of it, this all fits into our MCPS strategic plan, which has been rolled out by Dr. McKnight. Academic excellence, when students are safe, when they feel like they're in a community that cares for them, when a community they love, they can focus on work. When students are in a safe space, well-being doesn't have to be a challenge anymore. We know that our students are carrying so much and the world has changed, especially around social media. So when we make sure that well-being and family engagement is a key component, the sky's the limit. And then lastly, our professional organizational excellence. Our school buildings will excel when we ensure that our staff and students are cared for. So with this plan of restorative justice that we are rolling out at all schools, all levels of the school building will be successful. Next slide, please. So one of the pieces that is inserted here is the student code of conduct. And if you notice where the arrows are pointing, it is a requirement for staff to kind of build those relationships, build those components with students to make sure that they are seeking those meaningful relationships. And it's those meaningful relationships that we must foster because it'll help decrease the amount of behavioral challenges that we can face in the school building. Next slide, please. So why this idea of restorative justice? The concept of the school to prison pipeline is real. Oftentimes it is our most at-risk youth who are easily thrown into the juvenile and criminal justice system. When we think about our African-American males, 3 times more likely to be disciplined or expelled for the same infractions as their peers. And a lot of times it's those areas of subordination, disrespect, disruption. At the same time, our students with disabilities are 3 times more likely to be disciplined for the same incident as a non-disabled peer. So a lot of times what we want to do with our restorative justice platform is to create a place of equity, a place of an equal platform where challenges of this nature are not immediately to, I'm going to take a punitive approach to get rid of the problem. Next slide, please. So what I would like to do is show this video. And typically when I'm working in professional development opportunities, we don't like to show videos. It's something you could do on your own, but this video is very powerful. So Derek, if you don't mind clicking on that link of disproportionality, it's going to show a video. And if you can pause that, and I think you might just have to share your sound too. When you did screen share, there should be like a little button in the bottom left for sound. So you might have to go out of this. Oh, and maybe the volume needs to go up too. All right, let's try that. There we go. Thank you. So we just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of look at the video, just to look at the numbers, the staggering numbers. Thank you, Derek. So I modified the presentation a little bit to cut down on time, and I put some resources at the end. So Derek is just speeding up, and he's our tech extraordinaire. Thank you, Derek. But yeah, so just wanted to give you some idea of numbers around, you know, suspension rates and discipline. So when we think about the school to prison pipeline, just some elements of that: racial and ethnic disparities, right? So equal access and opportunities. Zero tolerance discipline and school suspension, right? So we know if students are having challenging behavior, what is the cause of that, right? Is it that the kid is waking up in the morning saying, I'm going to come to school and be disruptive? No, there are some additional challenges, and we need to provide supports and work through that. Criminalization of adolescent behaviors. Focus again on those punitive measures as opposed to restorative approaches. And then lastly, those high stakes testing. And we know that when our students are outside the classroom, when our students are not given the access to instruction, that's where we see most of their challenges, right? And we want to make sure that the time outside the classroom, the time outside the school building is limited. So with restorative approaches and restorative practices, we can ensure that their needs are met, both academically, socially, and emotionally. Next slide, please. One of the initiatives that has been huge across the county is mindfulness. We have a great mindfulness team that works with us, Jeff Donald and Cara Vieira. They do amazing work. And it's something that's valuable. It's something that's useful. Oftentimes we encourage our teachers in all schools that we work with to engage in this. I know I was at an elementary school, and a kindergarten student was just upset, and she's like, Mr. Branch, I don't want to go to media. And we just took a moment to breathe, and we took a moment to just process the moment, and she was escalated. And we did some mindfulness breathing, and she came down and said, okay, I'm going to go. And about a half an hour later, she came back to me and said, it was great, Mr. Branch, thank you. But these are the things, right? We want to teach those strategies to our students so that when they are escalated, when they are overwhelmed, when they're stressed, they can find ways to de-escalate. Next slide, please. So what we're going to do now is take a mindful moment just to kind of engage in this practice. This is literally just a 30-second activity. What you're going to do, what I'm going to ask you to do is close your eyes. Visualize a place that is meaningful to you, a place that brings you peace, a place that brings you calm. That might be the beach. For me, that's my couch oftentimes, right? So find that place that gives you a sense of calmness. And as you close your eyes, as you visualize this space, I'm going to ask that we follow the prompts. So when I say breathe in, you're just going to fill up your lungs with air. You're going to hold it. And when I say breathe out, you're going to slowly exhale and release that air. So we're going to all try it together. If you're comfortable, you can close your eyes and we will get started. Breathe in, filling your lungs with air. And exhale, breathe out. Slowly feel your chest deflate. Breathe in. Breathing in and release, exhale, and breathe out slowly. And our last cycle, breathe in. Filling up your lungs with air and release. Breathe out and you're exhaling. Meaningful practices, right, that can support our students when they are not in a place feeling in a safe place, not feeling a place of comfort. Next slide, Derek. And you guys are going to all open your eyes now, sorry. So we're going to start shifting the conversation more towards school culture and climate. In the chat, what are some factors that can impact school culture and climate? What are some of those instances that impact how our children feel about school or feel about their classroom space? Punitive practices. That's a good one. Friends, thank you for sharing that, right? How are they getting along with their peers? Racial tension, neurodiversity. social interactions, not feeling like they belong, paraeducators for help, that's a good one. Feeling a sense of belonging, learning disabilities, yep. Another one you can add, specials to arts, teacher approach, right? Coping strategies, having constant teacher staff changes. Trust is a big one, right? Like for our kiddos, trust is a big thing. Communication with staff, right? What's the tone of our staff when they're addressing children? Shaming classroom management style, comfort. Recognizing different backgrounds and ethnicities, that's a big one. Changes in their routines, right? Like as adults, when our world is changing, right, we have to adjust to that. So imagine for children, giving them that heads up of different routines. Right? How do we incorporate fun, right? How do we allow children to be children? Understanding mental health, and that's important. That's that self-care piece. Yeah, thank you for your thoughtful responses. Variation with disabilities in the same class. Interactive peer learning. I always say that kids learn from each other better than they'll learn from me. That interactive peer learning is really important. Getting outdoors, yep. Student choice. Another example of that student choice is, I always call it universal design for learning, multiple means of representation. How are we tapping into the strength of our students? Mental state. Yeah, those are all powerful answers. Thank you, guys. A misdiagnosis, yeah. Telling a parent, your child is this, that's hurtful. That's causing harm. All right, next slide, Derek. Thank you guys for your responses. Sensory issues. Okay, now we're gonna go into restorative approaches to challenging behavior. The code of conduct piece is at the end on the resources, which I'll show you guys. Next slide. So restorative discipline does not work if it's an individual teacher approach. Restorative discipline is successful when it's a whole school mentality, when it's a whole school approach. It's something that says, we're not gonna work on excluding you. We're not gonna work on removing you. We're gonna work on integrating you, but understanding the needs, understanding how we can better support you. And if there's something that we're missing on our end, how do we incorporate that? How do we bring that learning into the building? A word that stands out here for me is meaning, willingness, and connectedness, right? How do we get our teachers, our staff, to feel like this is a meaningful part of work? That punishment piece never solves the problem. Oftentimes schools will say, Mr. Branch, we need you to come. And often it's the same child over and over. So my first thing is, whatever strategy we've been trying to use, they're not working, right? Let's try a different approach. How are we not focusing on the punishment piece, that punitive piece, and we're focusing on this restorative piece? Have we taken time to talk to the child? Because a lot of times when kids are engaging in harm, it's because they feel like they've been harmed. So how are we making sure that they have a voice and a platform to be heard? Next slide, please. So when we think about a restorative mindset, we're thinking about multiple components. How are we building relationships and trust? How do we make that the center of our community, the center of what our school is about, the fabric of our classroom? All members of the community are responsible to and for each other. Multiple perspectives, right? Understanding that as students in that class, they have a voice. It's not because I'm the teacher. Like, those lines don't work anymore, right? Our students are intelligent, they're bright, and they have feelings too, and it's important that those are acknowledged. Healing is a process. So when harm does occur, what steps are we taking to make sure that we're restoring the community? Harm doers, how are we having a conversation with those who have caused harm and not just removing them from the environment? And lastly, conflict is resolved through honest dialogue and collaborative problem solving. When harm occurs, everybody has a perspective. It might not be a perspective we agree with, but this is where growth happens. This is the opportunities that we have to create change and build the toolkit and capacity, not only of our students, but our teachers and staff as well. Next slide, please. So 4 questions that we typically ask when we're responding to student behaviors from a restorative approach. Number 1, is this behavior causing harm? So it's a difference between causing harm and my ego as an adult. Those are two different approaches. Number two, will addressing the issue immediately escalate or de-escalate the situation? As adults, we often have a checklist, a to-do list. I got to take care of this, check off. I got to take care of this, check it off. But are we giving our children the time and space to just process their emotions and understand I'm going to give them a moment, but then I'm going to circle back to them after they've processed how they feel and they've de-escalated? Number three, is this behavior threatening my power? And am I willing to give up my power in order to show this love to this human, right? Sometimes our teachers are the ones with the most fragile egos, and our teachers are often the ones who take things personally. So how are we creating a space that when something happens, that as an adult, I don't take it personal, but I see that as a call for help and support? And then lastly, what is my motivation here? Am I interested in understanding the root cause of this behavior to prevent and restore, or focus on a punitive consequence? One thing I often say when I go into my schools that I support is we do a analysis for data, right? A root cause analysis for data, but are we doing that for behaviors? Are we looking at patterns and seeing, oh yeah, they were doing that in this grade level and then it's moving to the next grade level? What steps and strategies are we taking to address the problem as opposed to putting a Band-Aid on it? Next slide, please. So when we think about restorative versus punitive, we're looking at helping students to understand that the damage done to the community is greater than the damage done to that individual. We want to make sure that everybody involved in this situation has an opportunity to share how they feel so that we can repair. The need to repair relationships that may have been damaged. That's important to bring people to the table to express how they feel. And oftentimes, once they've kind of had the time to share and repair that harm, they want to be friends again. Taking ownership over actions, right? That accountability piece. The value in taking an active role in making things right. And then lastly, which is most important, is those fair consequences, right? So when we do have to levy consequences, how are we ensuring that they are not punitive, that there's an opportunity of growth from those consequences? And then there's a conversation that comes with that. A lot of times with consequences, it impacts the well-being. Hey, you're going to go sit in this room for the rest of the day, right? That's exclusion, that's isolation. There's no growth, there's no measures of accountability in that. And it oftentimes escalates the situation. Next slide, please. Just so you guys know, I see the questions and comments in the chat. Please hold them because I want to make sure that they're addressed thoroughly. So in summary, I'm not going to go through this chart, but essentially this is an idea of things that I share with my schools in terms of, are we looking at a punitive consequence or through a lens, or are we looking at a restorative lens? And when we're putting, oh, they broke that school rule, right? How is that creating an opportunity for restoring? Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the relationships are what are established, fostered, and maintained. Next slide, please. So as caregivers and within our schools, here's what we can do. So RJ support within schools. All schools at MCPS have at least one restorative justice school-based coach, as I shared earlier. The role of the coach is to support community stakeholders, including the school community, with the implementation of consistent restorative language and practices. All MCPS stakeholders, parents, students, teachers, administrators, building services, support staff, the list goes on, are encouraged to collaborate with the school's RJ coach and reach out to instructional specialists like myself to support when needed. I know for me, for example, I've done my fair share this year of parent engagement nights where I've taken the time to just have parent nights where we talk about restorative practices. I've worked with support staff. I've worked with building service staff. So we're making sure that this is not just something that's for the classroom teacher, not just something, you know, for the principal and assistant principals and administration, but this is something that's carried through all stakeholders, all people that's involved with the daily activities of our children. Some things that we've done, as I said, supported staff development. I've supported student intake meetings. So if there was a student that was suspended, we talk about, okay, that student had to go out for some time, unfortunately, but at the same time, how are we reintegrating And how are we putting a support plan in place so that the same action, the same harm doesn't occur? How are we having support meetings in lieu of suspension, whether it be in school or outside of school? Mediations, oftentimes, Mr. Branch, we've tried everything. Can you come and work with this student and sit these two students down just to have a conversation? Restorative approaches. So for example, if harm does occur, what learning opportunities are we creating so that the student understands the harm that's caused to the individual and the community in hopes of those things not happening again? We talked about PTA parent nights. And then again, one of the departments that we also partner with is the equity unit. And we are working on some equity initiatives. Another thing that we are also doing as instructional specialists, as you may know, is many of our schools are also Leader in Me schools. So we're working with staffs for them to understand the connection between restorative practices as well as the Leader in Me criteria and lessons. Next slide, please. Benefits of restorative approaches. All parties involved have a platform, meaning they have an opportunity to share, whether you're the harm doer or the harmed, you have an opportunity to share your side and be heard. It provides an opportunity for reflection. A lot of times in the moment, kids don't understand why they did what they did, from our little ones to our oldest ones who are seniors in high school. But when you have an opportunity to sit them down and talk about it, they can reflect and say, oh, I did this because. Build the toolkit and capacity for future situations, right? Because we know the world doesn't stop with that situation in that time, in that moment. But how are we building their capacity for future decision-making? Places focus on the behavior. Oftentimes, I'll say to a child, I enjoy you and I like you, but I don't appreciate the decision you made, right? So that puts the focus on the behavior and not saying that you're a bad child, but it was just a bad decision in the moment. And then lastly, we provide opportunities for growth, repair, and healing, right? Because at the end of the day, those are the things that are most important to the fabric of a school community and a classroom as well. Next slide, please. So at home, here's what you can do as parents, caregivers, providers. Celebrate the positive. We always talk about the win-win situations. Any win, a phone call home from a teacher, a positive note, an increase in a grade, any little celebration, we want to make it a big deal for our kids because those are the things that matter. I know oftentimes with just my own children, how was your day? What went well? What would you improve? What are your relationships like with your friends and your teachers? I know I have my youngest son who's in 3rd grade. Daddy, I don't like my class. It went from daddy hat to RJ hat, right? So I'm like, what do we need to do? And I reached out to his teacher and I reached out to his principal to share those things. So at the same time, we want to make sure that we're hearing our children and having an opportunity for them to voice how they feel. Any small opportunities you have to just listen, whether that be dinner, whether it be a walk, whether it be a car ride, shopping in the supermarket, walking up and down the aisles, take those times to listen to your child and what they have to say about school. I also often share with my children, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be overwhelmed. It's okay to be anxious. We want to support our children in acknowledging those feelings and emotions that they have, and then give them strategies and tools to manage, right? Because we know we can't always be by their side, but we want to make sure that they can identify how they're feeling and what they need in the moment for support. We want to work together to identify problems and develop solutions. Consistent, constant communication with teachers and staff members is extremely, extremely important. Oftentimes there might be things we see in school, but not at home, or at home and not at school. So that communication is important so that everybody can be working together on the same page. And then lastly, when things do occur, how do we be reflective instead of reactive? How do we focus on the behavior, not the individual? Asking questions, what happened? What were you thinking? How are you feeling now? If somebody was harmed, what are you feeling today versus what you felt last week? A big question that we ask is, what do you need to move forward? And a lot of times that could be for the person that was harmed, but also for the harm doer. What do you need to move forward? Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that that relationship is repaired. Next slide, please. One way you can get your child involved is our RJ Ambassador sign up. Bethlehem Baru and Dr. Tariq Harris do an amazing job. This is every first Thursday of the month. So today, they do what we call a RJ Ambassadors workshop. And it's for students, middle school and high school students. I know we're also working with some of our elementary schools to kind of start an in-house program where they have like RJ ambassadors. But there is a Zoom link. So if you click on the link, and I'll actually put it in the chat, so once you sign your child up, they will email you and your child directly for them to participate. And this is every first Thursday of the month. The link is now in the chat, and they will get an email that says, hey, here's your Zoom link, what's your school? And this is amazing, an amazing platform, because one, they get to hear the perspective of restorative justice from other students across the county. What does it look like in somebody else's school? So I can be a student at Quince Orchard, and I'm on a chat with a student from Walter Johnson, and we can share and collaborate on what restorative justice looks like in our schools. And it also helps to share practices, right? So one school might be doing something amazing, and they're like, oh, I want to try that at my school. Okay, so it says the link doesn't work. I'm sorry. Can you guys try it again? Because I just opened it, but we'll put it in the chat one more time just in case. And additionally, students get SSL hours. For every session they sign on, they get 1 hour SSL. Learn more about what restorative justice is, how they can support RJ, voice initiatives, and for the most part, learn some additional conflict resolution strategies. Lastly, one thing we're actually doing, I am a part of a group that holds monthly restorative justice PLC sessions for our elementary coaches. And we actually are going to have a student ambassador support us in a scenario. So we're going to do a little role play of how we resolve conflict with students. And we have some of our student ambassadors supporting us in that. So it also kind of gives them a platform to kind of show their skills in terms of this is how we manage conflict. Next slide, please. So as we close, what we would like to have you guys do in the chat is give us one commitment, one thing you can commit to support and reinforce restorative language and practices with your child, or Betty, in your case, at your school. So what we're going to ask you to do is, as we close out in the chat, just share one thing you can commit to from a parent, guardian, caregiver perspective, something that you can do to support this work as well. So one response we see is separate the negative behavior from the child. What do you need to move forward? That's a big question. Listen more. I know sometimes when I'm home, it's like dishes, laundry, dinner, right? And I'm like, wait, give me a second. But the one thing I like to think about is when your child's coming to talk to you, that's the most important thing that's on their heart and on their mind at that time. So we want to give them that platform and that time to speak. Separate the child from the behavior. Take the time to dig deeper. Identify positive behavior and acknowledge it. Engage in meaningful conversation. Celebrate good moments. Accountability, that's a big one. Checking in, acknowledging feelings. Understand behavior is a communication. That's a big one, right? Make it understand that when children are acting out, it's almost like a call for help. Ego, that's big. Yeah. And that disrespect, a lot of, as teachers, we take it personally, right? So how do we understand that it's not something personal? It's just that it happened to be us in that moment. Not make assumptions. Mindfulness activities. And if you literally like go on YouTube, they have tons of mindfulness activities that don't take up much time. Listen and be there when they need us to be there. Yep. Just the simple question of how was your day today? Parents can be judgmental against another parent and how they handle disrespect. Next slide, please. And thank you guys for your responses in the chat. This is a feedback form that helps to guide my capacity as I work through the restorative justice initiatives of the county, how I can support schools. If you are in a particular school community and you have questions, feel free. You can either scan the QR code or you can click on the feedback form link. I will put that in the chat as oh, Derek's already ahead of me. Thanks, Derek. So that's in the chat for you as well, just to kind of give some feedback. And like I said, it helps to guide the learning. Next slide, please. The remaining parts of the presentation. Oh, well, I think my contact information is there. That is my direct cell. Feel free to text me or call me whenever you need. Oh, Wingate, that's one of my schools. And you can have my email is there. So if you want to email me, if you're like, hey, I'm at this school, I can definitely put you in touch with the instructional specialist who supports that school directly. So I want to thank you guys so much for your time and your energy and your engagement. This has been, like I said, this is a passion for me. I initially began my teaching career in New York as a special ed teacher for 8 years there and moved down to Maryland. So this is just something that I've been doing now for a while. And it's something that's very close and near and dear to me. The remaining slides of the presentation, we're not going to go through it for time's sake, but there's some resources here. Derek, if you could just go through it and I could just speak to them very quickly. This next slide, I believe, if it's the questions, I think it is. Yep, resources. These are things that you guys can peruse at your own time. Here's questions that we've been working with our staff, our MCPS staff, when harm does happen, right? Like, here's some questions you can ask for the challenging behavior, but for those affected. These are also questions that you guys can use as parents at home. If you click on the link at the top, restorative conversations, effective questions, it opens up to like a printable. So this is something that you guys can have at home. I use it with my children, my own children. My children had an incident in class and we talked through it and we processed. And my son said, Daddy, I kind of want to have a conversation with the other student. And it was great to hear them say that without having something to be forced. So these are questions that you guys can utilize as caregivers, as parents. Betty, for you, if you see a friend going through something, right? Something that you can ask them just to help them process the moment. The remaining slides after these sets of questions are just some slides referencing our code of conduct. And every level of the student code of conduct, it talks about restorative practices. So one thing we often encourage our schools to do is understand that, like, this restorative justice thing is not just an initiative that's here today, gone tomorrow. This is something that's mandated by the state. And at every level of the code of conduct, from a student that's tardy to skipping class to a suspension, restorative practices are required. They're not optional, they're required. And schools have to do a better job of making sure that they are bringing everybody to the table so that we can talk about what supports are needed to move forward. Because when a student is skipping class, they are doing it for a reason. If a student is consistently absent, it's for a reason. If a student is continuously harming the school community, whether it be with graffiti, whether it be bullying another student, it is for a reason. So it's important that we have these restorative conversations, implementing these practices to make sure that we are putting our students in the best position possible, especially so eventually so that they can be contributing members of society. So Phil, I am done. Again, parents and caregivers and guardians, thank you so much for allowing me this space and this time to share this work that is near and dear to me.
Floyd, you have done an amazing job, and I think that I see a lot of amazing comments in the chat there, giving you a lot of kudos. So thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and it's really exciting to know that this work is going on with within the system. And I think the parents who are participating this evening take comfort in knowing that you shared this information with our special education resource teachers, our elementary special education teachers, and with our central office staff members. So this is information that we're spreading across the adults that work with all of their students. So thank you again. I can't thank you enough. If folks have additional questions for Mr. Branch, as I mentioned, we will have a breakout room opportunity for you. What I'd like to do at this point is just put some parameters around the breakout rooms. We'll do 20 minutes in the breakout room, so we'll go to 8:40, and then what we'll do is come back and do a few announcements and close out our meeting this evening. So Derek, do you want to give us instructions on how to access the breakout rooms?
Okay, so we're going to open up the breakout rooms. At the bottom of your menu bar, you should see an icon, or it should say breakout rooms. At that point, you can select one out of the 3 rooms that are available to you. And the rooms are restorative justice. That's a room that you can choose. The other is SECAC co-chairs. And the 3rd room is director's corner. So at this time, you can select breakout rooms on your menu bar and choose a room. If you need any assistance in going into a room, just let us know in the chat and we'll go ahead and move you over to one of those rooms. Thank you.
And I did see that Connie joined us. She's already jumped into her breakout room so she can introduce herself there. So we'll see you all in the rooms. And again, we'll go to 8:40. Derek, if you could bring us back at 8:40, that would be great. Wonderful co-chairs, because I know that I haven't been as present to you in the last few weeks with my loss of my amazing coordinator. But I will, I know that Ms. Alamana is working on a time for us to get together. So please be patient with me in this challenging moment. The next meeting is scheduled for February 23rd. As I mentioned before, we will be hearing from Jen Strobel, who will be sharing some information about her new exciting position. Mr. Mazur, I know that she'll be happy to see you and all our wonderful regulars who are here. We are always looking to grow our participation. We had I think at our peak around 60 people tonight. So please share any information, share this information with others, and please, always feel free to forward the agenda and the meeting information to others. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for a wonderful evening. And I see one hand up. Miss, I'm having trouble reading, but Miss Merchant.
Yes, so I was going to say, to extend participation, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you have a recorded call, like a short reminder call that goes out once a month, like a few days before. We lived in Boston for many years, and BPS used to do that, and it was outstanding. It would be in English and in Spanish, and people then would know that this existed, because it's, SECAC is and because the name changed and everything. I can't tell you how much that would be helpful. I think
we have been, yes, and I agree with you. We have been doing that. I will check to see whether a connected message went out around this one. But we have been doing that. Okay, so I will check back on that, but that is great advice, and that is something that we have taken advantage of in the past, and we do have the ability to send out that kind of a message to anybody who has a student with a disability. But thank you for that. All right, thank you all. Have a wonderful evening, and thanks again to our presenters. Have a terrific evening, and I will see you next month. Take care.
Are we staying on to speak to the chairs after?
Thank you.
I don't think we're doing it this time, but why don't we find a time to do it next time? I think.
Okay. All right. Because
I'm
I'm
not sure where
to
to go.
last time. Yeah.
We created that separate breakout room to speak to the co-chairs. So
right. Sometimes it exists after this meeting is done and people talk for a while, but last time
we changed the format, to do the breakouts, but yeah.
Oh, okay. It's hard to choose between restorative justice and speak to the chair.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah, I would have probably gone to restorative justice.
It really helps to have the unfettered time after.
If I'm being honest.
Because parents have all kinds of questions, and it's good to have that community moment to speak.
Zolfa, why don't you email me and we'll try to organize some sort of off the books networking kind of thing, okay?
Okay, sure, Amy. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. And Mr. Floyd, I thought you were awesome. That was really fantastic.
Oh,
and
thank you.
It was nice meeting you, Mary Beth.
Yeah, feel free to reach out. Definitely want to connect with you guys. And like I said, start with your immediate school community. Because honestly, your principals know who we are and they know who the RJ coach is. And then from there, if like that doesn't work, reach out to me directly and we'll kind of put some things in place.
Oh, I suspect it will go well. I'll talk to Ashley Schneider and Principal Wallen to try to get that going. We have a
Sounds
lot
good.
of speakers who come sometimes, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Great to see you, Heidi. All right. Take care.